Hey, hi, hello. How are you all doing? The holidays are right around the corner, so I welcome all of you to the last episode of the Devlog of 2023. In the last few days, I've been mostly working on the enemy behavior again because I wasn't too happy with the old system and noticed a lot of issues that it got. So I took that as a reason to go on a bit of a deep dive today to show you all my new system, how it works, and how it plays out in the game. So, if we take a look at the enemy behavior tree, the part I've worked on is right here.
The first part is the same as it was. When the enemy spots the mech, it just walks up into firing range and fires the weapon. The new part comes right after, the ongoing combat behavior. You see, the way it used to work was that I used a system called the Environment Query System, short EQS, to check a number of positions in a circle around the mech for viable positions to go to. Then, the enemy would walk up to that position via a node called AI Move To, check if the target is still in view, i.e. if an uninterrupted line can be traced from the enemy to the target, and depending on the line of sight check, fire its weapon again or move to a different position. This might sound okay, but comes with a lot of issues. For example, the AI Move To node, when letting it work from start to finish, is great because it handles the navigation all on its own, but has the downside, for my application, that the character using it always starts and stops at the beginning and the end point, respectively. Even with the use acceleration for path disabled, there's still a noticeable jolt in the character movement, meaning if the enemy character moves to a point, checks that there is no way to fire at the mech, and then walks to a different point, it becomes this sluggish stop and go that feels too static for my tastes. Also, when the enemy chooses a new target point to walk to that's on the opposite side of the mech, it walks really close by, because it is using the shortest path automatically. I could have maybe fixed that by letting the enemy only go to neighboring points along the EQS circle, but that would have exacerbated the first problem again. And also, the whole thing just falls apart when the mech moves. In the time the enemy takes from walking from point A to point B, the mech usually moves out of range.
So I've tried to compensate for that by extrapolating the mech's position with its walk speed and testing for those EQS points there, but that only made problems worse. The enemy started walking to points in fucking no man's land because they thought, hey, that's the position where the mech could have gone to if it didn't change course or speed in the meantime.
Okay, so let me walk you through how I constructed my new system. I really like the idea of circling enemies. It invokes the associations of pack hunters and actual intelligence. So, the first thing I did was to be inspired by slightly esoteric game development and tested passing directional inputs to the enemy characters. Since they are focused on the mech via the focus actor node, they will automatically rotate to face the player's position. Applying a directional input to the right, while they always rotate around the center point, makes the enemy walk in circles. Great! Next thing I needed was an optimal circling distance, like try to keep 20 meters between you and the mech at all times. So I calculate the length of a vector from the enemy to the mech and pass the inputs. If the vector is longer than the distance, go forward, if it's shorter, go backwards. This immediately makes the enemy behavior work, regardless if the mech is moving or not, because when the mech walks outside the optimal distance, the enemy either catches up or backs off to stay in that range. It is of note here that Jeremy moves faster than the bull. I don't want running away to be an option to get out of combat easily with this enemy type. Now, this was still pretty static and I wanted Jeremy to switch the circling direction from time to time. For this, I used Perlin noise to generate some random values. Imagine it like a smooth but random graph that oscillates between 1 and 0, kinda like this. I can map this value to a different range, like -1 to 1, so I could use this directly to scale my sideways input. This would be suboptimal though, because it would also imply that Jeremy rarely gets the full input into one direction. For this, I mapped the Perlin noise to a wide range, something like -50 to +50, and just clamped everything lower than -1 to -1 and everything larger than 1 to 1. This way, Jeremy gets full input like 98% of the time. Whew, okay, that's the circling down for now. So, let's look at the circling distance again. It would be pretty unappealing to have the enemies all on the same conga line around you, so let's start by giving the line some girth. That is pretty easy. Are you nearer than 15 meters? Then back off. Are you further away than 25 meters? Come closer. Are you in between 15 and 25 meters? Then only walk sideways. Done, easy, but also a bit boring. So, first let's blur the outline of that circle. Let's shrink the area back down to 18 to 22 meters and add a soft area of 3 meters around it. Then check, for example, hey, are you between 15 and 18 meters away from the target? 16 meters? Nice, so that's 1/3 of the optimal distance. Then use 0.6667 as the input strength to back off a bit. Sweet. This way the enemy eases into the optimal attack distance instead of running full speed towards it. But that's still a bit boring, I think. So how about we use the Perlin noise method from before to generate us some forward and backwards movement. We can reuse the sideways input method and map that to forward and backwards movement, with some different values for sampling speed, range and clamping. Now it's just a matter to blend the random movement and the movement towards the optimal distance dynamically. But that's also easy, since we already have the factor that scales the forwards and backwards movement from the soft border. So let's revert back to the point where being outside the optimal distance gives full power input forwards and backwards. Now, instead of scaling that when passing through the soft border, we smoothly shift from directed to the random movement, and bada bing, bada boom, erratic circling behavior. But that's not all. Since we got rid of the nav mesh navigation while this circling behavior is running, the enemies no longer have an incentive to keep the mech in view. This is especially hindering when walking through an environment with hurdles, like...
I tackled that problem in two ways. While running the circling behavior, every enemy checks the line of sight to the target like every half a second. And when it gets broken, I use the AI move to node again to use the advanced navigation to reliably find a way back to the target. While moving like this, the enemies continue to check the line of sight. If it gets re-established, I cancel the node to avoid the stop and go issue I was talking about earlier, and just get back to the circling behavior.
Though this led to enemies walking behind a corner, popping back out to get sight of the mech, and just walk behind again. So additionally to this, I created a system that lets me shrink the optimal circling distance dynamically. Meaning, if the enemy walks behind a corner, they will pop back out, get line of sight of the mech, and start circling in a smaller radius. Hopefully now less likely to just walk behind the same obstacle again. A bonus to this is that it dynamically keeps the enemies close by in denser areas. Lastly, there was also the issue that enemies would constantly walk into walls while circling. To keep a distance, I just used a raycast that oscillates every tick between the orthogonal directions around the enemy to check for walls and countersteer. With this all established, when starting this circle of death, I generate a value in a certain range to use as a timer. When the enemy gets to firing the weapon, it then restarts the whole behavior, resets the circling distance and runs until either the mech manages to flee until the enemy stops pursuing, till the mech is dead, or until the next attack is triggered. It's like 5:32 in the morning on Christmas Eve, and I pulled an all-nighter to get this video out on time. So, hey, if you see me in this room here, you know, it's just some additional footage that I had to shoot because my voice recordings were, well, unusable, I guess. So I wish all of you who celebrate happy holidays and happy new year, and I'll see you around. Bye.